After 10 years, we finally have a new Scream film. So today I'm going to stop and rank all 5 Scream films from the worst to the best. Hi, my name is Sean, and I'd love to talk about movies and TV way too much. With that in mind, go ahead and join me down below in the comment section. Share your ranking of all 5 Scream movies. My list isn't the right list, it's just my list, and I would love to see yours. With that said, let's get started. Coming in last place is Scream 3, and while I think this is easily the weakest of the Scream films, I still find it pretty watchable, and if this is the worst movie in your long-running horror franchise, your franchise is doing pretty good. And I think the problem here is that it feels too much like they're trying to be clever rather than actually having some new insightful take on the slasher genre or some new way to send up sequels and trilogies. So what this turns into is, let's be clever by setting Scream 3 on the set of Stab 3, which is superficially clever, but they don't have anything all that interesting to do with this idea. In the hands of a stronger writer, this might have been a very interesting meta direction to go, but instead of getting Kevin Williamson back because he was too busy, they got Aaron Kruger to write the script, and he's a professional screenwriter that has been writing big studio blockbusters that have made lots of money for the last 20 years, but he's not a writer known for his distinctive style and wit. He's just a guy that gets the job done for the studios, and that's what this feels like. And Scream just isn't a franchise where you can hire someone just to get the job done. You need someone that knows the genre and loves the genre so that they can have clever insight into it while delivering the goods that you want from a horror film. From there's a whole bunch of new characters, but none of them are memorable, none of them are interesting, and even where they cast some good and interesting actors for some of these parts, because you don't care about the characters, they're totally wasted in this film. Sidney is barely in it until the very end. Very clearly, it's a movie that they were reworking all throughout the filming process and the editing process. Seems like they were going to have a second killer and then very late in the process decided, I guess we'll just have one killer, despite the fact that the killer has close personal ties to Sidney.
Step 3, right?
It's very forgettable when you get to it. It just feels like they're straining too much credibility, trying too hard to tie it all back together, to give some sort of reason for everything that's taken place over all these films. And so, while it still has some of the spark and the magic because the legacy characters are a lot of fun, Wes Craven is a great horror director, so you still have some of that spark here. The script itself, the story, the basic idea simply wasn't as strong as the other films, and that's what you see on Scream. But the real killer here was Courteney Cox's haircut, which she herself has made fun of. Coming in 4th place is Scream 4, and there's a pretty significant improvement from Scream 3 to Scream 4, but this is still a movie that I find very frustrating because for every character plot point that I really enjoy in this movie, there's something else with the writing that feels out of place. So on the positive side, you get some great new side characters, in particular Kirby.
Halloween, Texas Chainsaw, Dawn of the Dead, The Hills Have Eyes, Amityville Horror, Last House on the Left.
Hayden, of course, has just a great screen presence, but just having a character that loves horror movies as much as the audience is a nice touch, in particular for this franchise. The cold open is a ton of fun, both because of all the cameos in it and because it's like meta on top of meta on top of meta, which is just a nice twist for this franchise. And then just seeing characters at a different phase of life is nice. In some of the writing, though, there's just a bunch of frustrating elements. There's multiple sequences where the police arrive, where Ghostface is on the scene, Ghostface runs off, but the police don't pursue him. There's other times where Gail, who's always been kind of obtuse, but shows up at a police station demanding that she gets to go in on an interrogation, which obviously a reporter can't do that even or especially if she's married to the sheriff. So there's things like that where characters just act out of character just so the plot can continue and you can add contrived conflict into the script. I thought the Emma Roberts reveal mostly works because you take a character that you think is your new protagonist and make it clear they're actually the antagonist. But the Culkin reveal, not quite so much, because you have someone that's wanted a girl to like him for several years, and then as soon as she actually does, he decides to kill her because it's too late. It just doesn't really add up or make any sense to me. But then on the other hand, the cast here is really great. Granted, all the Scream movies have great casts, but here, even like two throwaway cops are Adam Brody and Anthony Anderson, though they're kind of wasted in this film. So this is one that has a bunch of really great things and a bunch of wasted opportunities at the same time. Real quick before I give you my final three, remember to join me down below in the comment section, share your ranking. Also, if you've enjoyed this video, I've done a ton of other horror franchise rankings. Halloween, Conjuring, Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street, and a ton more. If you want more content like this, check it out in that playlist after this video is done. In third place, Scream 2, and there's another big jump from Scream 4 to Scream 2. I think all of the top three are pretty great, and this movie does exactly what a sequel's supposed to do, and exactly what Randy says sequels are supposed to do.
More blood, more gore. Carnage candy.
Because the first film was such a success, this movie got a significant budget increase, and that just means they're able to tell a bigger story with larger set pieces. So now the cold open is at a packed movie theater while people are watching a movie of the cold open of the first film. When you get to the third act, instead of it being isolated to a home, it's carnage all across a college campus. There's a car accident. There's all sorts of bigger types of things happening. But it's not just a solid sequel because it's bigger and bolder. Also, it continues the themes and ideas of the first film. In the first movie, it's a bunch of people in a slasher movie that know they're in a slasher movie. Here, it's a bunch of people in a sequel that know they're in a sequel.
Oh, please, please. By definition alone, they're inferior films.
Thus leading to all sorts of fun scenes with Randy once again explaining the rules of a sequel.
How do we find the killer, Randy? That's what I want to know.
Oh, let's look at the suspects.
But the movie also ratchets up the emotion and the tension. By killing off Randy, they make it clear anyone can die in this franchise, and his death might be the most or the second most emotional death of the franchise besides the guy that dies in Scream 2022, but it makes you feel that sense of danger. So when you get to the sequence with the car crash and they actually have to climb over Ghostface, you feel the danger that they are in. On almost every level, this is a successful sequel. It once again has a great cast. I think the final reveals are a little bit forgettable with their motivations and who they are. It's like, oh yeah, okay, that happened, whatever. But besides that, a triumph. Our runner-up, Scream 2022. Now, this is a movie where on the one hand, it was one of my top 10 most anticipated films of the year. And on the other hand, I was really nervous of how the film would work. Our runner-up, Scream 2022. Now, this is a movie where on the one hand, it was one of my top 10 most anticipated films of the year. And on the other hand, I was really nervous about a number of things about this film. Right off the bat, Wes Craven died. We got new directors. How's that going to work? But second, I wasn't sure how the meta commentary would work. And then I saw the movie and I just thought they got it. They found the right angle. And in this era of rebootfuls where all of these classic films from the 80s and 90s are getting soft reboots that are legacy sequels, they realized we're one of those. That is our point to do the meta commentary, and I think they absolutely nailed it. The movie also balanced the new characters and the legacy characters really nicely, in particular by giving Sam this connection back to the original film that kind of made her very suspicious in and of herself, but then using the legacy characters to amplify elements, but not to overshadow the rest of the film. That was just balanced really nicely.
Do you have a gun?
I'm Sidney Prescott, of course I have a gun.
Add to that, you get some real vicious, nasty kills in it where you like see knives going through hands and necks and a bunch of other places. And then because we care so deeply about these legacy characters, when you get to that tragic death in the middle, it makes this one of the most emotional films in the entire franchise. And then even beyond that, just the reunion between Dewey and Gale. We care about them as individuals and as a couple. And as you just see how much they care about each other, but also realize how much they're torn by their different ambitions and desires, you feel that. All of it building to a climax with a bunch of surprises and twists. The final reveal about the motivation of the villains, I thought, was thematically fit the film that they were making. It made sense. It didn't have the emotional punch necessarily. It was like, oh, okay, that fits the story that you were telling. So it wasn't quite as powerful as maybe it could have been if they'd gone in a different direction and maybe made the sister the killer or something like that, or had Sam, our actual protagonist, as the killer or something. But it fit thematically with the story that they were telling. So for me, this was about as good as they could have done with a Scream movie in the year 2022. I was so pleasantly, not necessarily surprised, but I thoroughly enjoyed what they gave me. But coming in first place, Scream, a slasher movie populated by characters who have seen a bunch of slasher movies, thus know they are in a slasher movie and all the rules that you need to follow to survive the story that they are currently living. It's a movie that exists to send up and call out all the tropes of the horror movies of the previous 20 years, but not out of a place of cynicism, out of a place of love.
Never, ever, ever, under any circumstances, say, I'll be right back.
I'm getting another beer. You want one?
Yeah, sure.
I'll be right back.
The movie sets the tone and vibe brilliantly right out of the gate with this phone call between Drew Barrymore and Ghostface.
You like scary movies?
Uh-huh.
What's your favorite scary movie?
That makes it clear the characters in this movie understand horror films, and then very quickly it shifts from witty banter into a truly horrifying situation where in the first 10 minutes, the biggest star of the movie is gutted as her parents are driving up. And if only they'd gone a different way, if only she got them on the phone a little bit sooner, they could have saved her. And the cold open to this movie plays essentially like a horror short film that also sets up the vibe of the film, where you see her grab the mask, establishing the whodunit, as well as setting the events of the film in motion. From there, we're introduced to a memorable set of nuanced characters that you actually care about, so when they die, you feel it. When they survive, it matters to you. And then when they die in some of the sequels, it really rips your heart out. And one of the things that makes the movie so memorable is that they take the Scooby-Doo plot device and apply it to the slasher genre, where throughout the entire movie, you're trying to figure out who's the suspect, because anyone can be the killer in this film. And when you move into the final moments and it's revealed there's not one killer, but two killers. One of them, it's a deeply personal betrayal, and the other one is just an act of insanity. You feel it and you care about the twist reveal that happens. And as you see the two killers stabbing each other to try and frame someone, like, it's horrifying in this whole other new sense. Now, I've said it many times before, this is my favorite horror film of all time. It came out when I was a freshman in high school, and it just changed the whole trajectory of the horror genre for the next 5 years, where all of them were either written by Kevin Williamson or they were inspired by Scream. So this movie just means so much to me. But I do think it stood the test of time. It's a great slasher, it's also really funny, and it does a great job of poking fun at the genre that it's celebrating at the exact same time. But as I said before, if Scream 3 is your low point, you're doing really good. I think this is one of the most consistent, if not the most consistent, horror franchises out there, and this is my favorite horror film of all time, so without question, this one comes in at number 1. If you enjoyed this video, remember I've got a bunch of these horror rankings. You can check them out right over there in that playlist. All of the big franchises, Friday the 13th, Halloween, Nightmare on Elm Street, Conjuring, they're all right over there. And thank you so much for watching, and keep talking movies too much.